Oh, hey, good morning, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Rebel Roundup. This used to be a daily show, but there's just so much news out in the world that it is very difficult to pull a journalist off the news and get them to sit in a chair and talk about the news for an hour every single day. So we just moved this to a weekly roundup of all the news that's fit to talk about. And we do it in an unscripted way. We choose some of the stories in the morning, but because it's unscripted, sometimes you end up inside the dark recesses of my mind and I get to share all my thoughts with you that I wasn't able to fit into a video. And because the show's unscripted, we sort of open it up to your involvement too. I mean, who wants to hear me talk for an hour straight? I want to know what you think, because without you, there is no Rebel News. So if you are watching us on YouTube, that's great. They allow a lively, albeit censored platform engagement over there. But if you want the uncensored ability to speak with us, might I suggest you move over onto Rumble or on Odyssey. Those are two great free speech platforms that allow you to speak your mind because they don't care about what your political viewpoint is. And I don't really know about their political viewpoint, and that's kind of how I like it. But they also allow you to do something else. They allow you to leave a paid chat, which helps us out here at Rebel News because we'll never take a penny from Justin Trudeau. So we rely on the support of our viewers at home. And if you leave a paid chat over the $5 US minimum on Rumble or on Odyssey, on Rumble, it's called a Rumble rant. On Odyssey, it's called a hyper chat. If it's over that minimum, I'm obligating myself to read your chat on air. However, don't let that be the bar for entry, because we will frequently read chats that are below the $5 US minimum, and even sometimes the free chats if they're interesting to us, and I think to you at home. So get chatting, get talking, and you just might see me read your comment on air. Now, that's the nuts and bolts out of the way. I am chained to my desk. And I've been chained to my desk all week long because right now the Foreign Interference Commission is underway in Ottawa. I recognize the room that they're all sitting in. I even recognize some of the faces. And that's because they used that exact same room for the Public Order Emergency Commission the last time we examined something Justin Trudeau got completely wrong. And so a lot of the same faces are involved. CSIS Director Vigneault and some people from public safety and global affairs. We're seeing all those same faces again. We've got a new commissioner, though, and this commissioner, Justice Hogue, is basically tasked with cleaning up the mess left by David Johnston. Now, David Johnston was our former Governor General, who had, for a time, had a bit of a distinguished career until he decided to burn it all down in the end. Because he's a longtime family friend of Justin Trudeau. I think their ski chalets were next door to each other. If that is any indication of the Laurentian circles they all traveled in. And he was hand-selected by Justin Trudeau to look into if indeed foreign interference happened in the 2019 election and the 2021 election, which all the security agencies already knew happened, as it would turn out. That's what we're hearing all along, is they knew it was happening. However, they didn't brief the people who it was happening to. By that, I mean the opposition parties. They just kept briefing the Liberals. So they kept telling the Liberals, I guess, the recipients or the beneficiaries of the foreign interference, right? Because the PRC, the People's Republic of China, definitely wanted the Liberals to win. They were meddling in nominations and in local ridings to make sure that the Liberal candidate won. And so the security intel agencies were briefing the Liberals on, I guess, what the foreign meddlers were doing to their opposition, but they were never actually really briefing the opposition. You know, the targets, they were never told anything. And we've got some clips to that effect that we can throw to later, because I'm watching this all intently, because you will not ever, even though it is publicly broadcast, see a lot of this stuff reported in the mainstream media, because they want to go along with David Johnston's initial report that there was no foreign meddling. And so Justice Hogue now has this parliamentary commission that was created, I suppose, by an order in council after the governing Liberals were shamed into creating it by the opposition parties. And so here we are. And it seems fair enough so far, but I thought the Public Order Emergency Commission was fair too. And in that case, it ruled that the Liberals were justified in invoking the Emergencies Act, and a court has decided that the Emergencies Act was in fact illegal and unconstitutionally used against the Freedom Convoy and other peaceful protesters in the nation's capital. So I don't know. Seems fair enough, but you never know because sometimes the fix is in, as it was with the Public Order Emergency Commission. So that's what I've been doing all week. Let's get to a little bit of that. Olivia, I'm going to put you on the spot here. So we've got, you know what, I'm trying to decide which clip I'll throw to. I think it is one, let's dig a clip of Michael Chong. So there were 2 or 3, actually 4 real targets that have been named by the PRC, the People's Republic of China, and the CCP, the Communist Party of China. Conservatives that have been named by name that were targeted. Kenny Chiu in Steveston, Richmond in BC. Michael Chong, who is in the Toronto area. And he was targeted right out of the consulate in Toronto. Bob Soroya, another Conservative MP, targeted, and Alice Wong, Conservative MP at the time, who was targeted. I think Soroya, Wong, and Chiu all lost their ridings. And what's interesting about Kenny Chiu's riding is that it's 50% ethnically Chinese. On WeChat, the CCP operatives were spreading disinformation, I should say, although there's no real distinction, that his proposed foreign agents registry would censor Chinese people in his ethnically Chinese riding. This isn't the clip that I want, but that's the clip there of him explaining what happened in his riding. You see, he had run previously, I think in 2015, and lost. And then he run in 2019 and won. And then come 2021, the CCP said, no, he's too anti-communist, he's got to go. And what happened was the Liberal candidate won the riding in 2021 with fewer votes than Kenny Chiu lost with in 2015. And that's because we've heard over and over again at the commission that it is not just about trucking in foreign national students from outside the riding, as is the case with Handong, a bus full of Mandarin-speaking high school students from a private high school outside of his riding, but somehow all live within his riding, showed up to vote for him on nomination day, and a bus showed up and he doesn't know who organized the bus. Okie doke. Sure. And by the way, he just remembered that like a couple days before his testimony at the commission, which was quite comical. But what Kenny Chiu is saying here is that it wasn't always like fake paper voters. In the Chinese community, they are so fearful of being found out to have voted for somebody anti-CCP that they didn't even want their names turning up on the voter list. Because in Canada, we don't know how you voted. That's secret. But we do know if you voted. And they were so scared of their name turning up on a voter list in a riding that a Conservative who is anti-CCP had won, that they stayed home en masse. And Kenny Chiu testified to just the level of CCP threat that families face in Canada if they are vocally anti-CCP. Kenny Chiu, when he ran for the school board years ago, decided it was too dangerous for him to bother to talk to his family in Hong Kong anymore, because even just running for the school board here in Canada would put Kenny Chiu's Hong Kong family in danger. So he just cut ties with them. He said, I love Canada. I want this place to be better. I don't want to harm my Hong Kong family. So I just can't talk to them anymore. And that's the decision he made for Canada. But Olivia, I don't recall if we have a clip of Kenny Chiu saying that he was drowning, and the alphabet soup agencies, as he calls them, this like 15 CSIS, RCMP, all these elections bureaucracies. There are 15 of them tasked with making sure that our elections are safe and that we are not subject to foreign interference. Not a single one of them told him that he was being targeted by the PRC as it was happening. They just let him struggle. They let him swing in the wind. And then we'll go after this one. We'll go to Michael Chong, who was targeted right out of the consulate in Toronto, saying, they didn't even tell me. I was being targeted out of the consulate. My personal safety was in jeopardy, and nobody told me. And I got to the bottom of it yesterday, why they weren't telling him. And we'll go to that too. But let's go to that clip of Kenny Chiu that you just pulled up, Olivia.
Do you have that before you?
Yes.
We heard earlier that this is a summary prepared by the Government of Canada of a briefing that CSIS gave to you on September 18, 2023 regarding foreign interference in the 2021 general election, correct?
That is correct.
And that election took place on September 20, 2021, correct?
That is correct.
Did you get an understanding on September 18, 2023 why CSIS was only giving you a briefing then about foreign interference that took place for an election 2 years earlier?
It wasn't explained to me, no.
Mr. Chiu, in connection with the 2019 and 2021 general election, can you please comment on the usefulness or lack of usefulness of CSIS, the RCMP, and any other Canadian security apparatus efforts to track and combat foreign interference?
In 2019, perhaps it was still at the time of being established and also running through teething problems, et cetera, but I participated in the 43rd election, 2019 election, without much anticipation of mechanism that would counter foreign interference. And then throughout my 2 years at the House of Commons, I've learned about these, what I've termed the alphabet soup, GAC, it's Global Affairs Canada, CSIS, of course, everybody knows, the Site Task Force, Security and Intelligence Threats to Elections Task Force, and then so on and so forth. There's RM, P5, NCCOP, CSE, CCE, ESCC, and then CIEPP, all these. So the impression I have is it's a well-resourced net of protective mechanism. And so I gradually developed what is now to me, it's a false sense of security. And that's why I was deeply disappointed after 2021 election.
So all these agencies, 15 of them, he thinks they're looking out for him. He thinks he's going to be just fine because there are 15 agencies. And if China's targeting you and were previously a sitting MP who's now a candidate, right? Because you're not technically an MP during the campaign. He's thinking, yeah, of course, they've got my back. They didn't. Did you get that? They only told him something he already knew in 2023 about an election that occurred in 2021. What the hell is he supposed to do with that information then? He could have been poisoned by the PRC in between then and now. They didn't do anything. Now, I figured out why they didn't, and it's sinister. Let's go to Michael Chong, talking about what he would have done to protect his own personal safety Had one of these agencies ever told him that he was being targeted directly out of the consulate by a Chinese diplomat who eventually was expelled from the country for targeting Michael Chong? And Michael Chong, he's a red Tory. Normally, frankly, I haven't had great affection for him in the past, but boy, on this subject, is he ever great. And I'm changing my mind about the guy. Let's watch this clip.
Well, I am an MP who represents a riding that is partly in the Greater Toronto Area. As a result, I'm often in downtown Toronto. I'm often at the University of Toronto talking to experts in a range of policy areas at the the Monk School of International Affairs, which happens to be located at St. George and Bloor Street. And just up the street, a mere matter of blocks, is the PRC consulate where this particular diplomat, Mr. Wei Zhou, worked. So it would have been nice to know that this individual was targeting me so that I could have at least been aware of my surroundings and to ensure that nothing nefarious was going on. So those are the kinds of things that I think elected officials and Canadians more broadly need to be made aware of. If we're not aware of these things, we go about our business, not thinking about these things. Well,
So he had no clue. He's being targeted directly out of the consulate. CSIS, RCMP, Global Affairs Canada, by the way, and the Liberal Party, the Privy Council office also, so the chief bureaucrats around Justin Trudeau, know that the opposition MPs and candidates are being directly targeted by the PRC on Canadian soil in a multitude of ways. There are different ways that they do this to you. They will threaten your family. They will threaten you directly. They will threaten your voters, tell them to stay home. They'll threaten your campaign. They'll bus in fake voters. And they also, as it turns out, use Chinese language media here to effectively shun you in the community so that people don't know that you even exist. Especially if, that's how ethnically Chinese voters get their news. So they don't even know you exist. You're completely shunned from it. And so there's plenty of testimony heard about that. And nobody ever told Michael Chong that he was directly being targeted out of the consulate. Isn't that frightening? He could have been killed. And the Liberals would have had that information and not given him any information about the potential for that. Isn't that atrocious, all to win an election? Let's go to, and I don't think we need to show the whole thing, but late yesterday afternoon, the Conservative Party's lawyer, whose first name escapes me, but his last name is DeLuca, who is just excellent. He sets all these traps and you don't even know they're happening. So you have to listen to all of his testimony just from beginning to end, because if you miss the beginning, it's like watching Matlock. I just completely aged myself. But he sort of asked these questions, and then the person he's asking the question to sticks their leg in a big leg snare. It's beautiful. But late yesterday afternoon, evening, Eastern time, DeLuca got to the bottom of why the Conservative MPs were not being told they were being targeted. And as it turns out, the security apparatus in this country needed clearance from the public safety minister to give these secret briefings to the members of the opposition parties. And during the campaign, that permission didn't come. So all the information that the opposition parties was very generic. And so the public safety minister only waived that rule in 2023 when all of this hit the fan. So if we could show that, I think it's a 3-minute clip. We don't need to show it all, but is this it? Talking with CSIS yesterday, and hopefully that's the right clip. Let's try it. If it isn't, I'll see if I can dig it up.
So yes, Madam Commissioner, I believe that the May 26 refers to the threat reduction measures briefing that was provided to Mr. OToole.
Okay, and similarly, with respect to Mr. Chu, sir, is your answer the same?
Is it, I don't see the document at the moment, but is it contemporary to, so 18 September? Yes, I believe it is the case. I will make that assumption depending on the next questions you have for me, but yeah.
They're very general. Would the intelligence that was shared in this format, and as is reflected here with both Mr. OToole and Mr. Chu, have been gathered in the lead up to and during the 2021 federal election?
So, Madam Commissioner, my colleague just pointed out that indeed the meeting with Mr. Chu on the September 18 was under the guise of threat reduction measures. So as my colleague, Madame Tessier, explained earlier, that's the process by which we can use classified information. So the information, I did not provide that briefing myself, but my understanding is that briefing would have included information, yes, including related to the federal election in 2021, but other relevant information. That including, because it was a TRM, including classified information.
Okay, so to the extent that there was information with respect to the 2021 period, why was it being provided to both Mr. OToole and Mr. Chu only in 2023?
So, Madam Commissioner, we have, as been mentioned, we have limitations on what we can, and how we can apply threat reduction measures. When we also testify about the fact that there has been an evolution of how we have approached foreign interference matters in the country. And so at this point in 2023, discussion internally, and also after receiving a direction from the minister to share all information with all parliamentarians, we prepared those threat reduction measures and then briefed Mr. Chu and Mr. OToole with all the information we had at our disposal. So it was in the context of that ministerial directive that these threat reduction measures were undertook.
Thank you. Mr.
Okay,
Luca, I
that's fine.
think.
Okay, did you get it? It was right at the end there. So it was, they could not tell the opposition party members who were the targets of the Chinese meddling, that China was targeting them because they needed permission from the public safety minister to have these high-level secret briefings with them, because the opposition parties are technically not members of the government. So the Liberals, who were benefiting from the Chinese meddling, had the power to withhold the information from the targets of the Chinese meddling, and they did it until 2 years after the election. What good does that do to anybody 2 years after the fact? They knew they were getting high-level briefings the whole time because they were members of the government. They were getting briefings as members of cabinet. And I should note, Justin Trudeau and his chief handlers during the campaign in 2021, so as the leader of the Liberal Party and not as the prime minister, were the recipients of secret CSIS and these high-level security apparatus briefings that the other parties were not getting. This one-on-one treatment, Justin Trudeau was getting it. So what was happening in those secret meetings? Were they saying, oh yeah, by the way, we know that Kenny Chu is being targeted by the PRC. Should we tell him? No, I don't think so. You know, it's obvious the Liberals were being told all along the way that the Conservative candidates were being targeted. They didn't release that information to the Conservative Party so that they could protect their own safety, let alone the integrity of the election in those ridings. It's disgusting. It's absolutely immoral. Somebody could have been killed, let alone the fact that, you know, we have at least 6, 8, maybe 13 ridings that went the wrong way because of election meddling. Let's go to, sorry, before we go into just finishing up the last little bit, Olivia, do we have an ad break, or, you know what, I'll just finish up this last little bit, then we'll do the ad break and we'll go into Trudeau being an idiot, which is, I don't know why that's news anymore, but he's the gift that keeps on giving if you want to have a chuckle after a long day at the commission. So with relation to Han Dong, that's the Liberal Party MP, now independent, in the riding of Don Valley North. I touched on it a little bit earlier. There were Chinese high school students who went to a school outside of Han Dong's riding, who for some reason went to campaign at a school outside of his riding, where it's full of foreign national Mandarin speaking students. It's a private school. But miraculously, all these students lived within the riding, went to school outside of the riding. And on election day, or at least nomination day, they turned up in a bus that he forgot about and doesn't know who organized, but he just remembered it a couple of days ago when his wife reminded him. He now sits as an independent because the Liberals are trying to distance themselves. Justin Trudeau won't say if this recipient of CCP meddling, allegedly, don't sue me, Han Dong, if he will be allowed to rejoin the Liberal Party. You would think if Justin Trudeau were concerned about distancing himself from allegations of being a CCP operative, he would say, heck no. But no, he's just not sure. Let's watch this.
In light of the testimony and the documents you've heard, will you allow Mr. Dong to return to caucus, and why have you not done so already?
Obviously, these are ongoing conversations that need to be taken very seriously, and we are. This commission is an important moment for Canadians and for our institutions to really take stock of everything we've done to keep Canadians safe and look at what more might be needed to be done by our intelligence services to keep the integrity of our democratic institutions and our economy whole. That's why I'm looking forward to participating next week in the Commission's work.
What on earth is he talking about? So at least he's going to testify next week. It's probably going to be like when he testified before the Public Order Emergency Commission. But I think there are going to be some great moments during his testimony, because I have to tell you, Michael Chong's lawyer is absolutely excellent. Aaron O'Toole's lawyer, absolutely excellent. The lawyer for the Conservative Party, he's a joy to watch. My ears just perk up when I hear Mr. DeLuca's name. And even the lawyer for NDP, Jenny Kwan, there are two of them. Very, very good. Very good, asking tough questions. So I look forward to seeing Justin Trudeau try to over-emote his way through his testimony and baffle us all with BS as though we're all as dumb as he is. Do we have that clip of Justin Trudeau saying that there was definitely no election meddling, even as the commission is going on? Do we have that clip, Olivia? Okay. Well, maybe if we dig it up, but he told reporters, I think it was yesterday, maybe the day before, there's definitely no election meddling. Well, why the heck are we having this commission? By the way, CSIS said there was. I was just before I jumped on to the live stream here, I was listening to the Site Task Force, which is like another one of these alphabet soup agencies tasked with protecting the election and worrying about foreign interference. They said that there was foreign interference. But almost everybody is saying there's foreign interference. Now, did they do anything about it? No, as we found out. They knew, they had all the information. They just didn't do anything with it. So I don't know how Justin Trudeau can make that decision while the commission is still sitting unless he knows something we don't know about the outcome of this commission, which makes me skeptical now about the outcome of this commission, because I think he kind of said the same thing about the last official parliamentary commission, the Public Order Emergency Commission. So who knows? We'll see. Also this week we had Aaron O'Toole, your favorite bland politician. What do I call him? Vegetable lasagna, butter noodles. He showed up to testify, and he is absolutely certain that the Conservative Party of Canada was targeted because of their hardline stance against China, particularly on the issue of human rights. slavery, the treatment of religious minorities, including Christians and Uyghurs, free speech, foreign meddling, spying, Huawei, and the Foreign Agents Registry that was proposed by the Conservative Party of Canada. So he is sure that the Conservative Party of Canada was targeted, and he blames himself. And then he also said that they played a role, they played a role in his ouster from the Conservative Party of Canada leadership. Now that is revisionist history, because everyday Canadians played a role in that. It was the Freedom Convoy and his lack of support for it that led to him being tossed out and replaced with somebody far more robust, interesting, and conservative than Erin O'Toole, Mr. Vegetable Lasagna. He's like cauliflower without salt on it. So it doesn't even taste like cauliflower, you know? No butter, no salt, just cauliflower. Boring. He thinks that Chinese meddling cost 5 to 9 seats. I think it's closer to 9, possibly even 12. But that is true, but he should blame himself for his ouster as leader of the Conservative Party, because why would if you were China, would you want to get rid of Erin O'Toole? He's the reason people didn't vote Conservative, right? So if you wanted the Liberals to win, you would also want, even though Erin O'Toole took a hardline stance against China, you would also want him to be the Conservative leader, because as long as he was leader, there was never a viable alternative to the Liberals. So to say that China was involved in his ouster is a little bit crazy, because now, he's been replaced with Pierre Poilievre, who's just absolutely walloping the Liberals in the polls up 20 points. And doing well with millennials and Gen Z voters who have finally figured out that affordability is an issue, and they're making the connection between the carbon tax and affordability. The young people, the young environmentalists who normally vote for the Liberals are figuring that out, and they're moving to Conservatives en masse because Justin Trudeau is taxing them to death and putting the life their parents have completely out of reach for them. But also Pierre Poilievre is talking to them, which is not something the last 2 Conservative leaders ever did. So again, there's a lot of conspiracy theories being floated by Erin O'Toole to say that the CCP were involved in his ouster. I think that call is coming from inside the house, Mr. O'Toole. Let's take an ad break, and then we'll get into Trudeau being Trudeau.
The NDP Trudeau carbon tax on the farmer who grows the food and the trucker who ships the food is a tax on all who buy the food. Now they want to quadruple the tax. I'm Pierre Poilievre. I'll axe the tax so you pay less and bring home more.
I am the one being punished for speaking truth, yet he can mock females and say, call me a bigot, incite hate, and nothing's being done about that. But I'm the one being silenced by my federation. A lot of women are silenced and feel silenced, and that they have no voice, or they're afraid to speak up, fear of maybe getting kicked out of the federation, to be called names, right, for backlash.
They're trying to silence everyone by using me as an example. So, more and more people are going to be afraid to speak up. When it comes down to sports, which is my platform, it's bodies that play sports, not identities. And we have to stick to biology. We got to call a spade a spade. We have to call a man and a woman a woman. I have a huge amount of support. We just need those voices to be heard and people to speak up more.
Folks, it's undeniable that our rights and freedoms are under attack. But how can we know what rights we're losing if we don't even know what rights we already have?
It's Freedom Passport's mission to educate people about their rights and freedoms.
The Freedom Passport is an easy-to-read, pocket-sized booklet containing the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. It's a portable token of your inalienable rights.
There's an app, too. Easily access the Freedom Passport on your phone and compare rights and freedoms from around the world for only $3.99.
Join our global community of individuals who are passionate about understanding their rights and freedoms.
Visit freedompassport.ca and get your Freedom Passport today.
Okay, before we move on, I just want to go back to Rebel News Live. So if you want your tickets, they're selling fast. It's May 11th in the Toronto area, Greater Toronto area. You go to rebelnewslive.com for your tickets. But besides all of us fun-loving rebels and all of the friends and supporters who will join us there, I don't know, am I freezing up? My internet giving out? Is Elon Musk's internet letting me down? Besides all of your favorite rebels and the speakers, you will also have access to a network of friends you haven't met yet. Hundreds of Rebel News supporters, people who care deeply about freedom and fairness and free speech. And what I'm saying that for is that if you are a business, an organization, some sort of association, and you want to spread your message to people who care about the same things you do, go to ads@rebelnews.com. On the other end of that email is my friend Alex, and he would love to help you become a sponsor of our event, where you can showcase your association, your organization, your product to like-minded individuals. And what I know about Rebel News supporters, our friends, people who come to Rebel News events like Rebel News Live, is that they love to put their money where their mouth is. They love to let their dollars do the talking. They want to throw their money and their interest and their support behind organizations who care about the same things they do. And so if you want to get access to those people, a great way to do it is become a sponsor of our event. And that again is ads@rebelnews.com. And again, my friend Alex, very hardworking. He's on the other end of that email, and he would just love to talk to you and connect you with Rebel News supporters and viewers. So ads@rebelnews.com. All right, let's go into Trudeau. Trudeau actually said something that made a little bit of sense. The problem is that if somebody else had said it, he would have called them racist. But now that Trudeau's saying it, because he's losing all those young people who can't afford a house and can never dream of affording a house in the foreseeable future, he's trying to speak directly to them, and I think it's a little bit too late. So Justin Trudeau is admitting that Canada has grown at a rate far beyond what the country can handle.
You recently said your government is working on both housing supply and demand by turning the dial down on temporary immigration. Does that mean your government's immigration policy has contributed to record high housing unaffordability?
It's really important to understand the context around immigration. Every year we bring in about 450, now close to 500,000 permanent residents a year. And that is part of the necessary growth of Canada. It benefits our citizens, our communities. It benefits our economy. These are the levels that we have stabilized and grown steadily over the past years, because that's what Canada needs to continue to have a strong economy and strong communities. However, over the past few years, we've seen a massive spike in temporary immigration, whether it's temporary foreign workers or whether it's international students in particular, that have grown at a rate far beyond what Canada has been able to absorb.
Why? Why? Why is there a spike happening in a way that Canada can't absorb? And it doesn't, honestly, it doesn't matter, right? If you are letting somebody into the country, whether they're a foreign student, a temporary foreign worker, or a permanent resident who aspires to be a Canadian citizen, if you are letting them into the country, we have to house them. They need a place to live. They need access to healthcare. So that drives up the cost because those things are subject to the laws of supply and demand. More people wanting the same finite number of goods means that that finite number of goods is worth more for our socialist friends who don't understand economics. So I wonder, Justin Trudeau, if immigration is out of control and it's driving up the cost of living here in Canada, I hope you can find the guy in charge and ask him why he's doing these things. Someone should get the organization chart out of the Canadian government and show him who's at the top. Maybe he could talk to that guy and tell him to advise the immigration minister to pump the brakes so that the rest of everything can catch up. He's the guy who said we need to be at 40 million by such and such a date. We just hit 40 million. As Tucker Carlson puts it, we have this vast, empty, beautiful country full of natural resources and God's beauty. And Justin Trudeau just wants to fill it up with people, which is the opposite of why anybody would ever want to live here. One of the most compelling reasons to live here is that it is pristine and vast and sparsely populated and beautiful. And Justin Trudeau wants to turn it into just this overpopulated hellscape. Sounds great. Now he is having to pay the piper for his bad ideas. And boy, I hope he finds the guy in charge and holds him to account. Idiot. Okay, let's go to the next Trudeau question. Someone asked him to do a little bit of introspection. I mean, this is a question. If somebody asked this to me about me, I would be pretty able to answer it. But he gets asked, why do you think people don't like you? And I think he doesn't feel that way. But anyways, let's just watch this. It's kind of fun.
Do you think people don't like you?
I spend a lot of time talking with Canadians right across the country. I spent time this morning with construction workers, talking about the work that they were doing, building new rental units for Canadians here in Toronto. I think there is a lot of frustration with the way the world is unfolding, and that frustration is being taken out on people in positions of power. I get that. That's part of my job. But my job is to stay focused on the solutions that people are going to need, and that's what we're doing.
But what about you? I mean, we're both old enough to have seen a number of prime ministers, and I have never seen, the sticker that I saw yesterday in downtown Toronto running through the city with F. Trudeau on the back of a pickup truck, flags with your name and the middle finger raised.
Yeah.
Why don't people like you?
There is a level of polarization and toxicity that we see in a very visible way on social media and also in real life, as you point out. But most Canadians remain thoughtful and open and decent, and yes, frustrated and worried about their future. But I also know Canadians are good people who are willing to work together to build that future, and I'm part of that.
He's part of that. He thinks, I guess, that the people who don't like him are fringe radicals, the statistical rounding error of Canadians who aren't in love with him. But the polls don't reflect that, and he doesn't have a clue. He exists in a bubble. There is a level of visceral hate for Justin Trudeau that I have not seen in modern Canadian politics. The left irrationally disliked Stephen Harper. They didn't know why they hated him. I don't know if it was his hair, because it looked like it came from a Lego guy or what. But they really, really disliked Stephen Harper, but they couldn't really tell you why. Because oil sands. Well, what about them? They didn't know. Because corporate blah, blah, blah. They never actually knew why they didn't like Stephen Harper. But if you ask someone who dislikes Justin Trudeau, they will give you like a laundry list. I hope you've got lots of time if you ask that question to somebody, because they'll say, you know, the carbon tax, the gun ban, affordability, how he treats peaceful protesters, censoring the internet, how he treats journalists, how he treats everyday Canadians who disagree with them, how he has no ability to self-reflect whatsoever, how he's allowed the Canadian government to become contaminated through foreign influence because it benefited him. He's made us a laughingstock. His anti-Americanism. What do you think that's going to do for us when Trump's back in power, right? Attacks on oil and gas, attacks on Alberta, overstepping provincial autonomy, the moral virtue signaling when it comes to LGBTQ nonsense issues. Anybody who dislikes Trudeau can give like a laundry list of things that they hate him for. But if, you know, like, for example, you ask somebody why they don't like Pierre Poilievre and they'll say, his name has PP in it or whatever. Like, it's just the dumbest stuff. It's something you would expect from a third grader. It's very unimpressive and shallow. But Trudeau has no clue. He just has no clue why his party is plummeting in the polls. And, you know, the Liberals, God love them for it. They didn't turf him in time. And now there's no saving them, which I love. At least in Alberta, the UCP tossed out Jason Kenney with enough time to rebrand themselves. And there were enough of them that weren't politically contaminated by being Kenney henchmen that they could sort of piece the party back together and take it in a new direction with Danielle Smith. But the Liberals, they hitched their cart to this out of control horse, and it is running off the cliff and they can't get out. Couldn't happen to a nicer bunch. There's no possible way that they could rebrand themselves. They couldn't get a leader from within, because who are they going to trot out? Right? Like, who's next? Freeland? She looks like she has to check into rehab. Like, I don't know what's going on with her. Who's next? Karina Gould? Yara Sachs? They've royally screwed themselves, and I love it. They're gonna have to romance Mark Carney because he doesn't have any of the baggage that the rest of the Liberal MPs have for playing a part in all of this decay of Canada. Let's keep going. Justin Trudeau, on the issue of the carbon tax, as you know, Canadians were out rallying in the streets on April 1st because they can't afford to live. And Justin Trudeau is like, well, the best I can do is tampons in the men's room. Isn't that enough for you? So anyway, they're out rallying in the streets all across the country. The young people are fleeing the party because they can't afford to live. Justin Trudeau is trying to tell you that don't worry because we're giving you these rebates, which is like a Ponzi scheme in the worst possible way. If you said this in the private sector, straight to jail. He wants us to believe that if, first of all, if you pay more for everything, the weather will get better. Why don't we just throw a virgin into the volcano while we're at it with this pagan nonsense? But also, if you pay more for everything and he takes the extra money that you've paid, cycles it through the hands of 1,000 bureaucrats who don't work for free and who make really hefty benefits packages, that somehow he will magically, by doing nothing and creating nothing, make that money worth more and then give it back to you in the form of a rebate. Cool pyramid scheme, bro. But anyway, Canadians are out rallying in the streets, and Justin Trudeau is basically saying that they are just victims of disinformation at the hands of the Conservative Party, who don't want to do anything to stop deadly climate change, which they keep telling me is coming, but I am not getting. It is snowing heavy upstairs, and we are the first week of April again. So let's go to this clip.
right now, Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives have exactly zero solutions to propose for any of these challenges. They are not putting forward an alternative. They are recognizing and amplifying the frustration and anger people are feeling. But they are not providing solutions in any way, shape, or form. For climate change, for affordability, he's right now blocking the doubling of the rural top-up that helps, I was going to say it's conservative, but rural Canadians across the country with a 20% increase, 20% top-up on the Canada carbon rebate. They're blocking it in the House because of ideology. They're blocking money from going to people in rural communities who often vote for them because of their opposition and their desire to play politics. Yeah, their opposition to a price on pollution that fights climate change and puts more money in people's pockets. So I'm going to focus on delivering for people. That's what I got elected for. That's the commitment I made. And we took a very different choice in 2015 than the United States did in responding to the challenges the middle class is facing. They voted for a populist in Donald Trump. But Canadians voted for someone who's going to roll up their sleeves and deliver.
He rolled up his sleeves. That's about it. I shouldn't laugh, but that's literally all he did, is he rolled up his sleeves. Like every time you see him and he wants to be like a normal person, he rolls up his sleeves and then he's like Joe Normal, but he's definitely not. And he is basically admitting here that giving that rural top up is an attempt to convince conservative voters. He acknowledged that they were conservative voters to vote for him. I'm a rural voter. I'm as rural as they come. I don't even have landlines into my house, and I live in a log cabin in the middle of a hayfield. Okay? I am as rural as they come. Let me tell you something, Justin Trudeau. Stick that 20% top up where the sun doesn't shine. We don't want it. We want you gone. You cannot buy us off. We're not stupid. You know, I've got a 50-minute round trip to get a jug of milk. Sometimes it's an hour. That's just how I live. And I am not alone. The people who grow the food live far out of town. Where heavy industry is, it's generally not in town. The people who bring you the energy, they work out of town. We, by and large, vote conservative, and we cannot be bought for 20% top up at the expense of our fellow citizens, by the way. You cannot buy us off to sell out the rest of our fellow Canadians. Might work in Toronto. I don't know, but it's not going to work out here. And I'm just joking. I know Toronto is turning on Justin Trudeau, and I'm very supportive of that. Let's go to, do we have another ad break or no, Olivia? Should I just keep rolling? Okay, we've got this clip of Justin Trudeau. While we're on the topic of people turning on Justin Trudeau, the premiers continue to turn on Justin Trudeau. I think even Wab Kinew, NDP in Manitoba, he has turned on Justin Trudeau. We've got a video of Trudeau being called out by the CBC. Maybe it's snowing outside because hell froze over. Let me know. He's called out by the CBC over his carbon tax push and asked if he'll meet with the premiers who are calling for an emergency meeting. Let's see this.
More intense regulation would be more expensive for a company and for a business, and I guess we need to see the knock-on effects of that. But what kind of extra costs are we talking about here?
Well, then, if you're going to be going into things like subsidies, well, that's an immediate cost right there. But the answer to that really depends on, well, what kind of alternative are you specifying? If you're going to be doing a really dumb thing, that's going to be really much more expensive. Slightly less dumb, slightly less expensive. What we know is that carbon pricing is the least.
So that was a clip of, I guess, who the CBC trots out as experts. We don't need to deal with them. They're inconsequential. You've never heard of those people before. They are paid for by the taxpayer. They are eggheads in academia. And so they're there to tell the farmers that you guys are stupid when you complain about costing more to live in Canada, and you should just shut up and listen to the fancy people at Laval. No, thanks. No, thank you. I can figure it out on my own. Let's go to the video that I originally called for about Trudeau being called out by the CBC. Again, perhaps it is snowing because hell has indeed frozen over.
We're not only fighting climate change, we're putting more money in the pockets of folks who need it through the Canada Carbon Rebate. That's the framework we built with all premiers working together back in 2016.
Do you think you've made that case?
I think we're continuing to make that case. It's understandable that at a time of anxiety, of pressure on costs, of affordability concerns, that some politicians are trying to drum up support for themselves by scaring people and by giving misinformation. It's unfortunate, but we're going to continue telling the truth.
So just to be clear, you don't think you've lost the narrative on this? We had a conversation this week with somebody who's a defender of the carbon tax. He explained it. He talked about it as a dumpster fire in terms of how it's rolled out. You don't think you've lost the narrative on this?
I think what we've actually done in the policy, it is helping Canadians. Now, the fact that Conservative premiers or the Conservative leader of the opposition wants to take away those supports for Canadians, that's something that people need to hear. And that's not something that they're talking about. So we're continuing to talk about the fact that they have no plan to fight climate change and no plan to keep supporting people with affordability.
Of course, it's not just Conservative premiers, though. It's Wab Kinew in Manitoba. It's a fellow Liberal in Andrew Furey in Newfoundland and Labrador. What would it take for them to convince you that this is not the right policy?
Well, they have the opportunity to put forward a pricing frame that makes sure that pollution isn't free at the same level for the rest of the country, but in a way that works for their province if they don't want to have the federal backstop.
So Andrew Furey has said that he wants a meeting with you to talk about this. He wants the premiers to come together with you. Will you have that meeting?
I had a meeting in 2016
will
with
you
all
have the,
premiers.
Will you have
when
the
we built
meeting
this.
now with?
I will continue to talk with premiers, but I will continue to be pressing Andrew and all others on the actual facts that we have a plan to fight climate change that puts more money back in the pockets of Canadians that need it.
We've had two premiers since 2016. What a lunatic. Basically, he's saying, well, it's okay. You don't have to have my carbon tax, but you have to have an identical carbon tax that your province brings in, and then it can be your carbon tax in a way that works for you. But you have to have a carbon tax at exactly the same rate as the federal one, but just it'll be yours in your province, and then that's fine. You can do this in a way that works for you. What in the hell? And then when CBC's the current host asked him, well, why won't you just meet? Like, why won't you just meet with the premiers? One of whom is a Liberal and another one is NDP. It's not just entirely Conservatives that are saying this. And he said, well, I met with him in 2016. Won't they shut up? 2016? That was 8 years ago. That was when Rachel Notley was the premier. So we've had Jason Kenney, tossed him out. Now we've got Danielle Smith. And he won't meet with us? Nothing's changed? Not an affordability nothing's changed? Okay. Well, it's that kind of out of touch attitude that's going to see him out on his ass October 27th, 2025, as though I haven't started a countdown. Let's go to this last video of the day. And then I've got to get back to what I missed on the Foreign Interference Commission, because my favorite, the Conservative lawyer, was up just as I was coming on air because they were going a little late. I thought I would be able to just, like go from one break into this and then go finish up and then go back out and lunch be damned, but it doesn't look that way. So I just want to make sure that I cut those clips of DeLuca just giving these guys, these security bureaucrats, the business. But let's go into this last clip. Carbon tax protester held a press conference the other day and calls Trudeau out for his hypocrisy because, as you know, Canadians, you get your measly little carbon tax rebate after paying way more for everything else in every aspect. This tax that is cumulative all the way down the supply chain, wherein you can't afford to fill up your car anymore. And you're making decisions between heat or eat. But he's making it rain on all these other countries around the world. So a carbon tax protester rightly points this out.
But the reality of all of this is that everybody in Canada will be affected, because the goods that we're buying and purchasing in Quebec and any other province are all going to be affected by this tax hike. We've already seen the impact on the price of food, the price of heating, and all kinds of other items that we need to survive. This is a very bad move. That is why, in my opinion, we see so many people protesting right now. They're doing it in a very legal and respectful way. They're not blocking roads. They're not causing any trouble. We are really good Canadians trying to get a message across. And that is the right thing to do in a democracy. Justin Trudeau is always proud to stand up on a podium and say how he is a great defender of democracy across the world, ready to spend hundreds of millions of dollars in Ukraine and other countries to secure democracy. Why won't he apply those same rules in our country? When 386,000 Canadians signed the largest petition ever in Canada asking him to resign or to call elections, he brushed it off. In my opinion, that's not democracy. Did not even address the question. I think that we are at a crossroad right now. Canadians are standing up. We're doing it in a peaceful manner. We are using the tools at our disposition, like we're doing right now, expressing ourselves, expressing our concerns, going out of our way to do press conferences, which we never do. Anybody looking at this, watching this, should realize that this is not normal. This whole scenario is not normal. You don't see regular Canadians standing up, doing a press conference, trying to get the government to listen. And there's a reason for that. We have hit a low point. We can't take it anymore. And I'm talking for a lot of Canadians. I can't speak for all of them, but a lot of them. This needs to be addressed. Our Prime Minister, who is so keen on democracy, should do the basic thing in a democracy and listen to his people.
Sounds like that guy wants his bank account seized. Because you can't be that articulate and hold the politicians to account making the decisions in Ottawa, speaking truth to power in a peaceful way, and not expect to have consequences at the hands of Justin Trudeau's tyrannical, out of control Canadian government. Okay, I know that Efron whispers to me in the company Slack channel that I have to wrap this up because Ezra needs the studio and thus the studio operators. So I don't want to keep them occupied with me. I've got one chat to read. Olivia, is that it? Yes. Okay. Comes from Steven797, gives us $5 and says, after Trudeau is expelled from government in the next election, can we expel him from Canada for being a traitor? Perhaps China would be a perfect location for him. Do you really want him expelled from Canada? I think after Trudeau is no longer the Prime Minister, we hopefully will be able to see the full scope and scale of his corruption throughout the whole of government. I think the first 2 years are probably going to be just a series of commissions and inquiries into what he did and how much he knew about what was going on. And I would not be surprised if people end up in jail. I'm not saying Justin Trudeau, because the guys at the top usually escape accountability. Look at Jean Chrétien, right? So I'm not saying that he will end up in jail, but I'm sure some people will, I think, probably. But do you really want Justin Trudeau expelled from the country? I kind of want to keep him around just so that every time he goes in public, somebody yells at him. He can never show his face again. Can't go surfing in Tofino without some Tofinoite yelling at him as he tastes some tasty waves, whatever our Prime Minister Spicoli does when he's out there. I want him to not be comfortable in public anymore. I'm not saying that I want him to fear for his safety, but I think after he ruined so many lives in Canada, I'd like him to stick around and have to live with it. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Well, guys, that's the show for today. I should wrap it up so Ezra can use the studio. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks to everybody who works behind the scenes to put the show together.